Welcome to the channel rather dubiously called Rufioh. I'm the best Yu-Gi-Oh tuber in my street, a very average player who uses this platform to trick you into thinking I'm good at and capable of playing Yu-Gi-Oh on any kind of level at all. Before we get started, why don't you hit subscribe for me, even if it's not because you secretly enjoy bad content, but because you pity me. I need every bit of help I can get. Hi guys, this is Joe here from Rufioh, back with another deck profile video for you all. Recently I've been running Lunalights and I decided I would share my build with you. It's most certainly not perfected yet. I've only been playing it for a few weeks, so there are still some rough around the edges decisions and ideas in here, and a couple of tweaks that I've made that I felt are sort of working quite well and tested online. So again, may not be perfect, but it might be a good starting point if you're looking to pick up the deck. The other thing as well is it might give you some ideas that you can take into consideration for your own deck that you might not have considered before. Before we get started though, I do want to apologise if there are any crazy noises in the background. And that's exactly why I'm kind of warning you about any silly background noises, because I have this weird pug next to me that decides to snore, and he's about, I don't know, a foot away from me. He also likes to get up and drink giant gulps out of his bowl, which is right next to me too. So again, apologies if there are any crazy noises. As always, I live in the noisiest house in the world, but we will get stuck right into the profile in just a second. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to start off with showing you is our Lunalights. The ratios surrounding this are kind of pretty standard. I think most people are running a similar sort of number. So we start off with triple Collider Chick. So Collider Chick is like one of the most important cards in the deck. The awesome thing with this is that it sends Lunalights to grave for cost, which is just really, really insane. Like, a lot of people will try and ash this and impermanence it and everything. They can't ash it. It's not possible because it sends for cost and not for effect. And if they imperm it, it literally does nothing. That also means that if its effects are negated, it can still activate and send for cost. So when you bring it back off your Tiger and that kind of thing, it can actually still activate its effects, which is really, really nice. Three of them is pretty standard. I definitely wouldn't recommend cutting it below that personally. Next on our list, we have triple Lunalight Tiger. It's absolutely insane to me that this wasn't destroyed on the list. I think it's the most common card that people think should be hit from the deck. It's fucking wild. Like, it just allows you to extend beyond all belief. Sometimes I'll resolve like the same one like 4 times in one turn. It's absolutely bonkers. Being able to get like 4 free bodies on board, and then if it gets destroyed, it can then summon another one. It's just absolutely fucking insane. Don't be surprised if this gets banned on the next format, because this deck will get a little bit stronger actually off the new Master Rule, because of course as well, even in like the fusion variants, they'll sort of improve their ability. Things like Cross Sheep are going to help advance the game state. This card's absolutely insane and almost certainly is going to get hit on the next list. Okay, next up we have 2 copies of Yellow Martin. This in combination with your Tiger is absolutely wild. If you open like Chicken Tiger, you're normally in a really, really good place, and normally it's because this card allows you to just abuse it. So you're usually going to summon this, you're going to send your Yellow Martin, you're going to play your Tiger, Tiger's going to summon the Yellow Martin, you can like link them off, you can use Yellow Martin to bounce the Tiger back to your hand, to summon itself. You can reactivate this, summon another Lunalight from grave again, and then make like an Xyz from there. So normally off Chick Tiger, you end up on like a Link 2 with an Xyz monster underneath, and it doesn't include any other extenders you may have. This card's insane. Arguably another card that could potentially get hit on the list, but it's so cheap that it really doesn't matter, and we've got a few weeks before there's any chance of that happening anyway. And our final Lunalight monster is Emerald Bird. So this just helps, like, again, just giving you another name, another option. It's got the ability to allow you to draw cards, to do special summons, that kind of thing. Just a really, really cool card to sort of send, especially once you've got Yellow Martins in grave. This is another good option. I personally like to get this in the grave quite early because it just helps extend your plays a little bit more. Okay, next up we have a few extenders. Personally, I wasn't running this before. I decided to add it back in again, and actually it sort of improved things a little bit. I made the mistake of running Winder at 2. I know a lot of people running it at 3, but I was like, if I see it, it's okay, and if I don't see it, I don't really care. And it felt really, really bad. But actually, since I've upped it to 3, that was absolutely correct. I should have known, really. It makes more sense. But the fact that it's on a lure target as well, so you can just get rid of it if you don't need it, it gets you to searching the counter trap really, really early, especially if you're seeing it open in hand along with like a Chicken Tiger. You're normally in a really, really good place where you can end with like this searching the counter trap, you're going to be able to have a gamma in hand that's live. So you can have the counter trap, the gamma for interrupt, whatever your reader is going to search off the top of their deck will help for that as well. And it could just extend your plays a little bit further. It's really, really cool. And at the cost of attaching one Xyz material doesn't really matter in this deck, because a lot of the time you're just attaching one and then getting rid of them anyway and cycling through to your next ones. So this is a really, really cool card. I do run a slightly smaller engine with this than other people. I'm not running like Bezel Ship. I'm not running, what's the one that searches? The one that looks like a little fucking spanner dog thing. That thing. Anyway, I'm not playing that. And I'm only running the counter trap. I'm not running the other one, the old shitty one. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't do enough for me to sort of keep it in. So we've got the Time Thief cards in there. And then for our other extenders, we have Blackwing Zephyros. This card's insane. You already know. It kind of doubles up as like another Yellow Martin, because a lot of the time you can bounce your Tiger again and then resolve the effects all over again, which is just fucking wild. And then finally we've got the Five-Wrist Buffalo. That most definitely was my pug. Yeah, he's dreaming, guys. Apologies about that. This is like a free body on board. You'll see the link monster later on, but basically you get to Foolish Burial this to grave, and then it revives itself. Normally having to send like 5 Fist cards from the field, but when you put the link on the field, you don't have to pay that cost. So it just becomes another free body, and of course it's searchable off your Tenki if you need to get to it. I'm seriously, guys, I'm trying to concentrate, but this dog's doing my head in. Wild. Anyway, so we move on to the hand traps that we've got in here. So we've got Cyframe Gear Gamma. This dog's ruining my life. And we've got one Driver. Obviously, Driver isn't a hand trap. It's fucking useless, and almost always you're going to open it in your hand. The really cool thing with Gamma, though, is that you can actually search it, and you can resolve it really, like, frequently. I resolve it most turns, actually, because you get to search it. And it's one of the things that, like, is going to stop your opponent committing to plays. They're going to try and bait you and make suboptimal plays to try and get this out of your hand early. The other cool thing is that if you summon this to zones that Lambda points to, and then this ends up in the grave, and this gets banished in the end phase, you will get to do another search of another one, and then obviously you'll be able to summon this one from the grave as well, which is really, really cool. And in terms of the rest of the hand traps, we are literally running the 2 Ash Blossom. I would probably run Imperms or something like that if I had them available. There's an argument for like DD Crow, there's an argument for Droll and Lockbird. For me, like, this is a deck that I'm mostly taking to locals, and when I take it to regionals, I feel like the game is so open and expansive at the moment. Like the last regional I went to, I think I played like 7 or 8 different decks. So you can't main for one, you have to side for it. So with that in mind, I think Ash hits the vast majority of other decks. It is also once per turn, so if you see multiples, it's dead ass. And it comes up enough. Like, you could run the 3rd if you can find the space for it. I can't justify cutting anything for it at the moment. Okay, next up we are onto our spell lineup. So I've got triple Lunalight Perfume. I think this is pretty much mandatory. This card's insane. A lot of the time you won't open the combo that you need of Chicken Tiger, and this will help you to get there just by getting one in grave. Being able to banish this or being able to send it off Foolish Goods will allow you to banish, dump any card, which in this deck is insane anyway, and then start your combo that way. So it's a really, really cool card. The fact that it's also like not once per turn, and also the fact that you can activate both effects in one turn is just absolutely insane. Card's really, really good. Absolutely mandatory 3 of, in my opinion. Next, we move on to our other 3 of, which is Tenki. So these are German, so you won't be able to read what they do on screen, but essentially these search your level 4 or lower Beast Warrior from your deck. You can do this once per turn, so it is hard once per turn as well, so you can't just activate like multiples or whatever. It also gives your Beast Warriors an additional 100 attack. No one really cares about that. It very rarely makes any difference. But it has some other cool interactions, like being able to bounce it and stuff with the link, which you'll see later on, which is something that I've put in recently after seeing it in another really big deck profile, and it's been really, really cool since, so I would recommend looking at doing this. But yeah, Tenkis are really, really good, and of course they're just free things to like get rid of and pop, and you know, you can bounce it with a Zephyros if you need to and reactivate it and get another search, and you know, that kind of stuff. It's just really, really cool. Card's really strong. Next for our spells, we've got 2 lots of 2 ofs. So we've got 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. I'm very tempted all the time to have 3 of these, and then I find that they get a little bit cloggy, just from my experience, especially with how quick you like dig into this deck and you're searching things like that. They quite often become dead cards. Now I know you have got the ability to pitch cards quite easy in here. I just don't really like having the third, but again, I kind of bounce between the two, so if you do feel like the third works for you, then surely go ahead and do it. There is obviously the nice thing of, like, if you open it, it's essentially like another copy of, well, basically any of the Lunar spells and traps that you need to see, and it gets your guarantee body on board. So it is really nice. I can see why people would run the 3. Currently I'm just running the 2 and it works absolutely fine for me at the moment. My other 2 of, and this is a new addition to the deck. I've tested it a little bit, so not super extensively, but in theory it works well for me. It's called By the Grave. So many people have been cutting this recently, just because it kind of fell out of favour with, like, everyone was playing Gamma, which is obviously still a thing in, like, Impermanence, but actually I feel like a lot of the other hand traps are finding their way back into the game. Stuff like Crow, which it hurts this deck beyond all belief. Being able to just, like, Crow one of your resources, like one of your Lunalights, when they go to grave, it could just end your turn. And you can't afford to do that. In theory, you could up this to 3, again, because you want to see it in your opening hand, but it's also not a combo piece, so it doesn't necessarily get your plays going. It's a very defensive card, so if you see it, it's nice. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. I think it's just a really nice option to have in there. Again, mathematically 3 is probably more correct, but 2 works fine so far in testing. That may change over time, though. I may remove these. That's entirely up to you yourselves, what you find in your testing. Next up, I'm moving on to my draw spells. So I've got Triple Allure. Now this is something I had again cut for a little while, weirdly enough, when I was running Dangers, and I know that sounds kind of a bit backwards because Dangers are dark and, you know, easy to banish and all of that kind of thing, but I felt like at the time, maybe it's because I spent too much time playing Thunder Dragon and that kind of thing, but I really felt like Allure was actually not really benefiting me in a lot of ways. Like, I know the draw's really nice, but a lot of the time the stuff I was banishing, I wasn't really gaining anything off. Like, even when I was playing it in Orcus, like, I could banish a Nightmare and it would still have value. I could banish something that I could shuffle back, but with Luna, you don't really get that. Like, you can banish chicks so that, like, battle phase stuff can't be done, which only really helps, like, if your opponent's going to evenly match you or something like that. So I guess, like, there's a kind of, like, niche scenarios and where it's good. But I had cut it in favour of Popper Up, which we'll go on to in a minute. However, having gone back into this, I do feel like you need the added consistency. It's one of those things where, like, you can get really, really weird hands of Luna. Like, it's not very commonly bricky, but you have a lot of cards that you kind of need to get into one other place, and once you do, your whole combo gets going. And this can normally help you just dig to get into a card that's going to help you get there. So I feel like at the moment the positives may actually outweigh the negatives, but more to be said on that, you know, through testing, that kind of thing. Like, logically, Allure's supposed to be really good. Just my experience wasn't great. However, I have gone back to trying it again, and so far it's been nice again to have back in the deck. For our other draw spells, we have 2 copies of Performer Pal Popper Up. This card is absolutely bonkers. I keep recommending to everyone to run this. You'll see this creeping up in a lot more decks. Like, essentially, so for those who don't really realise how this works, you're going to pitch whatever amount of cards you want from your hand, up to 3, which in this deck is insane because everything is live in the grave. You get to draw the same amount of cards, and then you take 1,000 damage basically for every card in your hand. So sometimes you're paying like 5k life points, but more often than not, when you resolve this and you get to ditch what you want to and you're uninterrupted, you win the game. Like, it sets you up so much. Oftentimes, where you are in, like, those awkward, convoluted hands where you can't play, you wouldn't have been able to win anyway, so this will set you up. It's a bit like Desires. Like, it doesn't matter if you pay the life points, it doesn't matter if you banish cards off the top of your deck. What's important is that you win and you are able to continue to play, and this card allows you to further your plays, continue to play, and to stop you losing. If you lose afterwards, that's fine, you were going to lose anyway. This might just help you dig that little bit deeper. I really, really like it. I would be tempted to run it at 3, but again, with now Allures and stuff in here, we're digging quite deep. I don't want dead copies of this in my hand. I just want to try and see it once, maybe in a turn, and be able to resolve it and sort of leave it at that. I really, really like it, and I would recommend highly that you try this out and see how you get on with it. And then for our final draw card, we have 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. This doesn't really need explaining, and if it does, I don't know where you've been for the last however many years. The old Patrick Hoban favourite. Upstart Goblin, it just cuts your card numbers by 1, so essentially you're running a 39 card deck rather than like a dead 40, which increases your percentages slightly, and I know that people don't really see the value in that necessarily unless they understand how it all works, but effectively by boosting your percentage, your chances over the course of a format, it increases your chances of seeing important cards in your opening hand far more often. And finally, we move on to our last 2 spells. Apologies about the noise in the background, he's now licking his own bollocks. So we move on to our 2 power spells, our 2 remaining cards before we go into our traps. We have 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Does what it says on the tin. It basically puts any Lunalight monster that you need into your grave, or your Zephyros, or even your Firefist card, just so that you can recycle it and extend from there. And then finally we have 1 copy of Double or Nothing. Nobody realizes how easy it is to win games with this card. Like, the amount of times where I can be on the back wall, I can be backs up against it, my opponent's setting up a nice little board, but they've left that 1 monster with less than 2,000 attack on board. And pretty much in this, you're guaranteed to be able to get 2 4s on board in any given turn, and just making Utopia and then killing your opponent's insane. Sure, sometimes you'll open it to be dead, which, you know, kind of creates an argument for being able to play a second copy. I think 1 is absolutely fine. Like, if you see it, it's insane. Like, if you can get to it, rather, from the search. If you open it in your hand, it doesn't matter. You can just pitch it and get rid of it. Or you can set it and hope your opponent takes the bait and, like, pops it or something like that. It does, you know, it can double up attacks and things like that, but it even, like, if you draw it, but it's obviously not as good. Okay, so round up our trap lineup. There is only 2 here, so it's nothing too insane. We've got 1 copy of Lunalight Serenade Dance. Card is really, really good. It summons from deck, which is nice, and then you get to pitch a card, which again is also nice. The continuous effect doesn't really matter because we don't play the fusions, which is something what it's to do with. But essentially, you're going to pitch this to grave, and you're going to get summoned from deck. This card's commanding kind of a high price at the moment. They're really, really hard to pick up. I was lucky to get this at like half the actual value of it, just by chance. It had been listed quite low on eBay. But yeah, highly recommend if you can get hold of this. This is really, really important for the deck. It's not unplayable without it, but also the fact that you can search it off your Yellow Martin when it's detached from your reader, because it detaches for effect, not cost. It's really, really nice. And you can't get the perfumes because the perfumes say Lunalight rather than Lunalight, so you can't search those. So really, really cool card. I'd say it's fairly important in the deck. I would highly recommend getting it, although you can kind of run it without it. And then our final trap is Time Thief Retrograde. So this is the new one from the new set. But basically, when a spell or trap is activated while you control a Time Thief Xyz monster, which is usually going to be straight away on your first turn, you can negate the activation of your 2, attach that card to a Time Thief Xyz monster you control as material. You can only activate this once per turn. So this is a little bit nicer as well if you've got stuff like Perpetua, because it can allow you to go into that. Personally, I'm not running Perpetua. I opted to go for a smaller Time Thief lineup because I felt like there was better utility rank cards to go into, just from my personal, you know, experience and testing and that kind of thing. But this card's really, really nice. Just having like this on board with a couple of other interrupts can sometimes be enough for game. Just getting to those consistent boards in turn 1 is a really, really important part of this deck. And then you just grind. Once you resource out of your deck, you can just keep going. But this will help you stay in the game. And a lot of the time after you resolve this, with a couple of other interrupts, you can just push for game next turn, or put your opponent in a position where they are going downhill and you're just snowballing advantage over the next few turns. And that is it for the main deck, guys. Just 40 cards dead on, 39 if you include Upstart Goblin, because it's, yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, dead on 40. I don't really feel the need to go over it. It's actually very, very rare I ever do decks over 40 anymore. I've been spending a lot of time, like, focusing on Yugi Theory and stuff, just because I'm like a bit fucking stupid. This game in particular, I'm actually not so stupid outside of this game, but anyway, besides the point, I'm trying to improve my game overall, and I feel like dead 40 is usually the optimal way to run a deck, and there's, you know, a multitude of reasons for that. You can look it up. I'm not here for that education lesson for you, but dead on 40 I would recommend running it at that yourself, and obviously with Upstart it's 39. So we'll now move on to the extra deck. Okay, so moving on to the extra deck, we're going to start off with Time Thief Redoer. This is one of the most important rank 4s in the deck. This is going to be one that you make on your first turn, basically every single game. It's going to steal cards from the top of your opponent's deck. Depending on what you're playing, that can lead to you having extra interrupts, extra draws, and being able to get you gammas in hand, which is always really, really nice. Of course, if you want to run Perpetua, you can. That will help improve synergy with this, but I just felt that without it is absolutely fine as it is. Next up, we've got, what's his name? Tiger King. I can't see it because of this fucking stupid, shiny, pre-platinum starlight thing going on. Anyway, Tiger King, he basically searches Tenki. He does also have like a skill drain effect, which sometimes comes up, but a lot of the time you're going to search Tenki off it and then go about your plays. He's just really, really good, really easy to make in this deck. Next up, we have Force Tricks. This pretty much exclusively searches you your Blackwing Zephyros. You give the search into hand, and then normally you're just going to get rid of this pretty quickly as well. We have Dagares as well. He does a multitude of things, but like for me personally, I'm not running Barricade Blocker, which is something that people swear by in this deck. But this basically does exactly the same thing, except you get to draw as well. So for me, this is just a little bit better and actually just as easy to make in this deck. So if you feel like you're tight in extra deck space, which really you kind of are in this deck, then I actually favour this over Barricade Board Blocker. Next up, we have one copy of Baguska. Quite often, people will mine me when they realise what I'm playing. So next time they'll side in mines. They drop mines, and then I just make this and set it up defensively to give me an extra couple of turns, so they can't really get rid of the mine with any real benefit. They can't sort of set up a board, pop the mine, and then go for game, which is what a lot of people will try and do. This will just stall them out. The some decks are just auto-lose to Baguska. The some decks are just can't play under it, so give you 2 turns to try and see the cards you need to finish them off the following turn. Next up, we have Tornado Dragon. Again, it's just another one of those cards that's really, really good in a lot of scenarios. There's a much more back row centric deck types out there at the moment. It's just really, really good. Like even in the mirror, being able to like force their like pop in their Lunalight Tigers and stuff like that. Sure, they'll get the summon off at the one time, but then it's usually just gone from there. Against other like Pendulum decks, you can pop their Scales. Against like Allgeist and stuff, you can pop important back row. Yeah, just that kind of stuff. I think it's a really, really nice card, and you know the fact that it's a quick effect is just really sweet as well. Next up, we have Abyss Dweller, arguably the best rank 4 in the game. Certainly up there, that's for sure. The amount of decks that just lose to this is absolutely unreal. You can switch off opponents' entire turns with this. Yeah, just a really, really solid card. A lot of the time I'll end on this, along with the Time Thief and Lambda, and if I can, I get the Set Trap as well. Next up, we have the Utopia package. This is for double. You already know how this works. Basically, you're going to make this guy search double. This guy will summon over it. You attack, you negate it, you drop double it as a because it's a quick effect. You can drop it from hand, and then this will now be dealing 10,000 attack over whatever you hit. So if they have a monster with less than 2,000 attack, they lose immediately unless they can stop it. So it wins games on the spot. It's actually usually wins more games, I think, than Boral Sword, because people expect Boral Sword and try and do things to stop it. Whereas you're making so many rank 4s, like a lot of the time they don't really think about it. Sometimes when you get to this, people will want to drop Ash, but quite a lot of the time in this deck, you can bait early with the amount of like draw cards and searches and stuff you have beforehand, and then you go in for game from there. And that's it for the rank monsters. Next, we move on to the links. So moving on to links, we have Cyframe Lord Lambda. This is like insane. It's the link I probably make most in their deck. It's usually going to be the first thing I end on, again with the Time Thief and whatever else I can basically get into. It allows you to activate the Gammas and stuff from hand, which is insane. Being able to do it during your opponent's turn with like a full board is just nuts. It also gives you a bit of protection later on. Like if you can keep this on the board and you think your opponent's playing Nibiru and basically hasn't seen it, or if you think they've got it in hand and you can finish it under the amount of summons, then it means that going forward you're basically protected from Nibiru and that kind of stuff. A lot like hand traps and that kind of thing. You just give yourself an extra layer of protection. Just really, really nice and really easy to make. We've got one Brotherhood of the Five-Fist Eagle. So this has a number of effects, but essentially the most important one is it can Foolish Burial the what's it called? Buffalo guy from deck, and then he can summon himself at no cost because of the effect of this. It also has an effect where it can like bounce or something like that, one of the 10 keys, and do something. Oh, that's it, yeah, sorry, it bounces to Foolish, whatever. But yeah, basically the main important thing is that he allows you to just keep summoning back that guy for free. It is only once per turn, but normally that's enough to set up your next line of plays. Next up, we have one copy of Masquerena. I feel this card is insanely important. Just being able to like unicorn your opponent and stuff during their turn is really, really nice. A lot of the time, like even if you don't have anything, even if you're bluffing, like a lot of the time you'll end on this and just have it on the field, and your opponent's going to be like super suboptimal because they're going to be worried that you're going to just use this and like bounce something or interrupt them in some way. You'll be surprised how many times I've had people play around this and not realise I don't have a card in hand, so I can't even unicorn them if I want to, and it's allowed me to continue to play the game for like another turn. But the card's really strong anyway overall, like not just for bluffing your opponent. We have one copy of Unicorn, as explained there. There's a lot of nice synergy with Masquerena, but also the fact that it's just really easy to make, it's really generic, being able to like remove cards to spin them back rather than destroy them and that kind of thing is just really neat. Next, you have one copy of Appaloosa. It's not something I make an awful lot in here. Again, if I sense that my opponent has got the Nibiru and I haven't really got a way to stop it, but I've got like a lot of extenders, I'll go into this and then I can play on from there. But even like mid-game, if you're in like a weird scenarios where this can come up and it can just end your opponent's turn because you know they've got like no good power spells left, and all they're relying on is monster effects, you can just win the game. There's some decks, like, if they don't have their monster effects, they just insta-lose, and this will just get you there. And, you know, like, once per chain negation of monster effects is just insane anyway. Like, everyone knows how good the card is. And then finally, for our last extra deck card, we have one copy of Boros Dragon. Win buttons are nice, guys. Like, again, we have our Utopia double, wherever he's gone, to allow us to go for game and that kind of thing. But this just gives you another option to get there. A lot of the time, like, you can use this and exhaust it, and people will think that you've got no way to, like kill them or to like finish them off really easy, and then you can go into Utopia later on down the line and they won't see it coming. They'll normally assume that this is like a big blowout card. And that is it for the extra deck. Finally, I do have a side deck here. This isn't actually anything near the finished article. It's actually just basically optimized for locals. So I'm just going to show you what kind of stuff I'm running just to give you some ideas, but it's certainly not like something you would take to a region. It just gives you some ideas of what I'm doing. So I'm running 2 copies of Mystic Mine. The idea here is that if I'm forced to go second, I can just play this, stop my opponent for like however many turns I want if they're not prepped for it, and then wait until I see the cards that I need to see in hand, and then I can just get rid of it and go from there. And there's some decks that just auto-lose to it, like if you're against like Spiral and stuff like that, a lot of the time, like Sphere mode won't be enough because you lose your normal summon, which you really need. Nibiru just doesn't kill them, like I found, and the board's just too strong for anything else to work. Like Dark Ruler No More says you can't win this turn, which also is like a concern because against a deck like that you need to kill them really quick, and cards like this allow you to just shut them off until you put yourself in a position to do so. You could argue running this at 3, but like 2's okay. I'm trying it out at that and we'll see what happens. I'm running 2 copies of Twin Twisters. Again, this is something I'd normally run at 3. There's a multitude of reasons I'm running this. Firstly, that I can pop my own Mystic Mine, so if I'm going second, I've got a way to set up mine and just get rid of it nice and easy without putting myself in an awkward situation. But also against like back row heavy decks is really strong. Other mine decks, that kind of stuff. Like a lot of the time, if you're playing game 1 and your opponent sets up mine, you just lose. And that's the case across the format. So people don't know you're playing mine and they don't have the back row sided in, then you're going to like auto win that game. And then also, of course, it sets you up for your own plays and that kind of thing. Next, moving on to traps, I'm trying out 2 copies of Dimensional Barrier. Again, I feel like this could easily be a 3 of. I could easily do like another like 5 or 6 slots in here. It's really like hard to sort of decide. There is like kind of some weird stupid card that I'm playing here just for locals, but we'll go over that in a moment. But D-Barrier, a lot of people are trying out Shaddoll Invoked at the moment, so it's really strong against that. It just gives you like a way to play, like to stop them for an entire turn, or even just switch off their monsters like the following turn during yours, and then you can just like go to town on them. Next up, I'm running 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. Shout out to Grandpa for making me run this at my last tournament. This card's really good. A lot of people don't like sort of remember how good this card is until it gets flipped on them, and then it's too late. Like life points don't matter. Obviously you have the issue of going into time now, which is much more a problem than it was before with life points, because you don't really have those extra turns to sort of like reel it back a little bit. But more often than not, like if I'm forced to go first and I know that they're like a go second OTK deck, like this can just end their turn, and then the next turn I'm gonna kill them. And again, there's a lot of times where you'll play games where like they'll drop a mine and you have no other out than this, and you'll flip it and then they're just out of ideas, and then like they're on the ropes then. Solemn Judgment's absolutely insane. It's one of those cards I always look at and I'm like, oh, I could cut one of these, and then I remember how good it is and that I'm stupid for even thinking it. Next up we have Triple Evenly Matched. Triple Evenly Matched is, it kind of doubles up as back row removal because it forces your opponent basically into running like 1 card on the field. If they overcommit to their board, or if you're forced to go second, this can win you the game. You can side it in if you think they're going to make you go second, because even if they make you go first, it's just a backup plan for if everything else gets blown out. Or of course, you know, you've got it in hand, that kind of thing. Or you can set it if you want to, if you're into that kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know, like it just offers a lot. Like a lot of people are maining this at the moment and going second, so being able to play it when your opponent thinks you may not actually have copies of this as well and they force you to go second, just really strong position to be in. And then a final card is a stupid bit of spice. It's not really relevant, so please don't like consider running this, but this is basically for locals. I'm running a card called Try and Guess. I'd never heard of this before the other day, but I was getting pissed off because I keep getting cheesed at locals. Like in time, I'm grinding with someone, I'll be winning, then suddenly everything goes very slow. And because I'm one of those guys where I don't want to argue with people at the table, I'd rather just let them have their scummy win and then call them out on it afterwards. I thought, you know what, fuck it, I can be that guy too, so I'm playing this card. Essentially what this says is that if both players have an extra deck, which is basically everyone now because nobody plays Draco anymore, you can declare one extra deck type monster card, so Fusion Synchro or Xyz, because this is obviously before links were a thing. Both players reveal their extra deck, which is nice because, I mean, like, what you play is really common knowledge, but again, what they're running, you don't know if they've sided in anything to try and beat you in time as well, and that kind of stuff. So it has that kind of, like, fringe benefit. But the player who has more of the declared type of card gains 3,000 life points. Now, of course, our extra deck is full of Xyz monsters, so you can damn well guarantee going into game 3 all over the next couple of weeks while I'm at locals. I'm going to be siding this in and setting it turn 1, and then I'm calling Xyz and getting 3,000 life points for free, so I don't get cheesed in time, like I always fucking do. Trust me, guys, no good deed goes unpunished. Don't be nice to your opponents. If they're going to try to scum you in time, you should probably just call them out. And that is it for the deck profile, guys. Hopefully you guys have really enjoyed it. Again, it's not supposed to be, you should run it like this. It's just some ideas that I've been working on, stuff that's worked for me, tips I've picked up elsewhere that have worked, and things that maybe will work for you. Just stuff to try out in your testing and that kind of thing. If you're new to the deck, this might be a good basis to start on. Always test, make up your own ideas, decide what works for you, and implement them. Definitely don't just like copy everyone else's deck and go from there. Thank you very much for checking in, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you have, make sure you subscribe, and if you haven't subscribed already, definitely do that anyway. Drop me a thumbs up if you really like the video, maybe some comments about what deck profiles you'd like to see going forward. Maybe you'd like me to do some combo videos for you. Please let me know and I'll arrange for that to be done for you. Thank you very much for checking in, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the garbage content I put together for you enough to hit subscribe and maybe even drop a thumbs up and a comment. Before you go, be sure to check out the links in the description to help support the people who are making this channel a possibility. Thanks again for checking in, and I'll see you in the next one.